let's get right into it. So we're very privileged to have Prida Tiasuwan, who's the chairman of the Pranda Group Public Company Limited, here with us. Prida is actually is a veteran and a legend in the corporate responsibility world, and he doesn't only preach sustainability and corporate responsibility, but as some of you may have visited his factory. We did a factory tour a couple of months ago. And certainly you can see that he really does practice what he does preach. So without further ado, please a warm welcome to Prida.
I'm supposed to be speaking English, right? Who has been to my factory? Anybody? You do that, so that you can help me a little bit in the process. And it's a bit unusual for me to talk about myself. I hope that when I take you through this subject matter, what is the subject matter? What is it?
Prideful, passionate people.
Yes. I will do it quite quickly now. And I would prefer that if we have time left, I would like to explore into the last picture to get to know myself. Then I can be more participating. So, as far as we are concerned, the pride to passionate people, you can be sure that in my speech I will refrain to talk about my own emotion or my own morale. Subject is completely away from that. It's purely, if you like, purely sustainable economic performance. I'm dealing in jewelry, which is clearly a product that need to have to qualify for craftsmanship industry. Craftsmanship is the most important thing for our prosperity, let alone survival. So it's very important that we have to be surrounded by a group of people who have sorry, I got one of my colleagues. Would you sit down, please? Otherwise, my workers have to have a good balance of mind. My workers have to feel happy. Otherwise, my product will be ruined. And my workers are the most important ingredient part of the completion of the products. But believe it or not, my workers are only 17% of my total production cost. So it's not big. Because the raw material are so poor. So that even shed a light to the fact that if my workers are not happy, that 70% of the cost they can kill the other 83% of the cost. So it's so imperative from economic viewpoint See, I'm not talking about morale or whatever. I don't want to invoke that, especially when I talk about ourselves. From economic viewpoint, it's very clear that you would be, if anybody in my shoes, you would be well advised that to treat that 70% costing very, very importantly, because they in turn look after your other 83% costs and eventually bring the total product to the marketplace to enjoy profit. Admittedly, our industry enjoy relatively better gross profit than other industry because we're dealing with luxury, we're dealing with dream, we're dealing with something which when people buy, they perceive happiness out of it, they perceive luxury out of it. So for that reason, you tend to have a better margin. But the whole thing started by those group of people which cost us 70%. So it's very clear that we will do anything to bring about the happiness of the workers to attain the highest craftsmanship. Because the higher craftsmanship that we can attain, the better profit margin we can attain. Now, to make workers happy, we find that in this modern world, actually we started 41 years back, so we can't get away with the world. But the point of this modern world becoming very, very, really very important, very intensified because of the fact that in this modern world, everybody knows each other. There's no secret. I mean, you got this thing. You got uncle who, you got sister who, you got brother who, and who is really a guru. All of my workers has a smartphone. They know what's going on in this modern day. Point in case I want to make here is that you can't really be, what do you call it? Tachirona. What's that in English? What's that in English? When you actually do something that you do it because superficial. You can't afford to be superficial anymore in this modern world. You can see that everything that is now appearing in television nowadays, especially in advertising, they go deeper into human behavior and all that. The day of the used car salesman is finished. Blah, 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 buy shares, oh, it's so good, hey, now, best price and all that. It's gone. Today, you really have to be so real in explaining your product and all that. It's made of what is the content of the materials, what is, how long it will be lasted, and then what will be these whole after sales maintenance and all that. Because the consumer demands it, because the consumer knows it, because the consumer can compare you to the other people immediately. They just walk to the toilet and then check you out in the toilet. So, we of course did not do this because of the modern world level playing field of information. We did this 41 years ago. And we simply believe that if you are not virtuous in what you wanted to do, you will be found out. Anyway, 5 years later, 10 years later, and all that, so you will find out not so much because of the fact that somebody come to tell your workers that, oh, he's unreal. No, you find out because you did not instill the real culture into your whole organization. You don't really need it. You only do it superficially. For that reason, the policy guideline that you've given out to your respective executive or your own personal behavior will start to show and all that. You know, you talk about being equal in the workplace, having the same canteen and all that so on and so forth. Yes, you're the same canteen, but then you start to serve yourself a much better food on your table and all that so on and so forth, right? So that is how you know. So people start to see, people start to say, oh, well, this is Pachilo now. So, and because of that, when you have that, you don't really have a deep culture, you don't have a real culture. So you can't really convince your workers that they are, firstly, very important in the company. Secondly, their search for knowledge in order to increase their craftsmanship, capability, and all that are very important in the company. My point of case is that if you don't have the deep culture to support what you want to instill in your operation, at the end of the day you will not get it. Because things like craftsmanship is a long-term build-up. And you really have to have the real deep culture to support it. To attain the real deep culture, you need to have passion for it. And that's, if I may say, is probably the thing that you see in my factory. I think he told me that some you feel immediately when you walk into the factory, you feel the difference. Maybe you wanted to elaborate a little bit. What is the difference?
What I felt in the first step that what I really feel in the first step that I walked into the factory is just like why people here are so passionate in working in the factory. They have something like self-motivated and they're proud of what are they doing.
Yeah, there's a saying in the industry that when the private workers gathering with the other workers of the other factories, people can identify more readily that is a private worker. So that's what they said. So I guess we must be doing something right. Now I want to go to a little bit more into this called the build-up of this deep culture. Yes, you have to be passionate. You have to be real. But probably more importantly too, or equally important, you not only that you have to be passionate and being real with your own people, you also have to be responsible to the other stakeholders on our side, the external stakeholders. For example, the supplier is coming to our company. When they come in, we have to treat them like, not we have to, we treat them like partner. We don't try to screw all the pennies or cents out of them and all that stuff. And we don't pay around with, not paying them for months and all that sort of thing. We have to adhere to the promise that we promised to them, and basically if their quality is right and their price is right, the price right would mean that if they are, 1 cent, 1 star better than the other people, their quality is the same. So that's it. We don't try to squeeze any more stuff out of them. That's enough. We already, in our view, get the best price and the best quality for our need, and we stop there. We might get a few more stars by being assertive about it, but then we will lose their cooperation, we will lose their respect and all that, and that's not good. And of course, when the news start to get out into the workers that our company is really screw every pennies out from supplier. So then they start to think, well, company is good to us because we produce beautiful things so that they can earn good profit and all that stuff. But they really treat other people that way. We throw the polluted water into the outside the fence, hurting the community around. Yeah. So they start to complain. Obviously, when they complain, our workers can hear about it. So the workers start to think the same way that, well, okay, inside the factory is beautiful, but outside is really hell and all that stuff. So what it is. So the point in case here is that you can't be just treating your so-called internal stakeholders properly. You also have to treat the external stakeholders properly too. It goes together to deepen your so-called the culture of doing something good, doing something nice. And of course the whole thing boiled down to the fact that we have been having a happy life in our working relationship with all stakeholders. I would say, of course, not everybody can be happy with us and all that, but I would say we are happy now. We don't have grief. We have some disappointment sometimes, of course, but we always go to bed easily and all that, so forth. So I think that the last 41 years has given us peace and joy, and earning a respectable profit in working in this company. So I guess it is most important element that boil down to the sustainability of the company. We intend to be here for another 100 years. I'm sure I will not make it. This is where I want to end my speech. Really want to exchange. I want to explore outside, really, then I can really exchange a lot more. I say I don't feel comfortable to talk about ourselves. It's not my burden. I'm great at talking about the other people. Please.
Thank you very much for your time and to speak up. You mentioned, I heard you talk maybe close to 10 years ago Hans and yeah, when I was there with the social venture or SVM.
Yeah.
So thank you. It's good to see that you're still leading the charge of sustainability and corporate social responsibility at the time, and one of the early adopters. Right, my question now is, what are your biggest challenges as things evolve, as the world turns, as from politics to scarcity of resources to connectivity and technology? How has all these trends, what challenges have they placed in front of you to continue being a good business who does good but also makes a profit and keeps their people, happy? So what is right now? What are the challenges that you see, that you come up against, or you even see coming in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, it's actually making me think harder. I would say immediately that I think that craftsmanship is beautiful. It's what human beings should try to support. I know that we play around with a lot of robotic and all that, so on and so forth. But of course, I just, this morning, before I left the house, on the BBC program, as I suppose I could work on that robotic industries, all that, came out strongly said that, please do not think that this robotic can replace human being. They only can be used for repetitive job, low-level job. The complicated job, the craftsmanship job will still be done by human being. I was very happy. My most fear, obviously, is human beings do not appreciate craftsmanship. And I even go further, that when you're dealing with craftsmanship, you are dealing with human touch, as against robotic touch. When you appreciate human touch, you have love. So my final answer to your question would be that my nightmare would be when people stop learning each other. My craftsmanship will be gone.
And thank you very much. I actually have a vested interest in the topic today because I just started my own company just 2.5 years ago, so it's nothing compared to 41 years. My biggest challenge is to build a culture, which is very challenging, especially I think in this day compared to maybe 10, 20 years ago, because
40 years ago.
40 years ago, yes. Because nowadays, I think you're aware, with the young people, the mentality is very different. They value different things in life compared to what it was. So my question to you is, right now, I have set the values of the company, like on honesty and all kind of things, open communication, and I also have policies and guidelines for dealing with stakeholders, like customers, suppliers. I mean, what do you do when the people don't follow? I mean, we all sit in a table and we agree that, okay, this is how we're going to work as a team, as a young company. But over time, people forget, they take things for granted. They think, in Thai they say, maybe right, this is okay. Maybe right. So this attitude, I'm having a lot of problem with it because I feel that for the company to really grow, people need to respect the culture. You need to respect each other. You need to respect the team. So I mean, as a leader, I mean, I would like to ask for your advice. How you would go about creating this culture. Some people say it's better to use positive reinforcement, make people happy. Some people say that you have to use punishment. You know, there's a lot of very different things out there. So.
Yeah, another very good question. I suppose you are Thai and your activity is Thai-based. Yes. It's not your own fault. The value system of the Thai has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades. You have to blame the politician. Especially Mr. Thaksin regime. When we used to have this autocratic government under British regime and all that. And then we have the king, a speech of the king thought and all that on. Actually, the first one was sustainable development was actually come out and said economy and sufficiency economy. And United Nations has admitted that when they came out with this sustainable thing was actually inspired by the king, sufficient economy. The prevailing value before the so-called elected democratic governments, in other words, from political parties arrived, the prevailing culture or value was, respect elder people, be honest, be responsible to what you're doing and all that stuff. That was prevailing. I'm not saying it was only Mr. Thaksin, but I would say it's all to do with the whole politician, the lot that we've been having in the last 2 decades or so. But especially the Thaksin regime. They instill the belief like, if you have money, you have to spend now. You should like to enjoy and all that. So you have to borrow money from people who enjoy your life. At least, you think that I didn't say it right, please do so, because it's very important what we can be talking going forward. When you do that, then we start to have the call coming out and say that the Thai believe that you can corrupt someone, but you have to deliver. Meaning, you have to work, you have to produce a result. Then you are allowed to corrupt someone. He was standing very high in the pole, right? Sadly, nobody came out to protect, to say anything against that. Every time I go to public speech, I always condemn the elder statesmen and say, you got the responsibility to come and say this is not the right value. Somebody have to say it against it. And with this sort of thing that is going on, this change of value system in Thailand, and we are now facing with a younger generation that takes things for granted, more discipline, less discipline than before. This is the reason why I'm trying to do everything I can to go into this reform committee. I'm not in the 250. I applied for and I'm not there. But they know that I'm not going to give up. I spend most of my time now in the reform things. And my goal is to make sure that at the end of the term of this 250 people, there should be a declaration of core value that the Thai have to commit to certain core values. For example, the value to listen to, not to condemn other race. Racism is not acceptable. The value of listen to the minority. Value of observing the need to protect the environment together. This sort of thing. I only come out with about 10. I'm going to the workshop at the end of this month. Again with Adam Kahin. You know what I'm doing more with Adam Kahin? No, you're not. Yeah, I always see you everywhere, so you know. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to have a workshop on the so-called the reform of the police, the reform of the education system, and all I can think about. And you can brief me to me yesterday because they want to see it to hear my point of view and all that. So I said to them, look, I have been doing this reform thing for a lot. This is my year. I'm the first reform committee for law 8 years back with Ajahn reform. And ever since I've been doing all some form of reform and I joined Ajahn Pawekasi with the Assembly of Reform for Thailand and all that. So I try to put this jigsaw together. At first, I think the politicians are just hopeless. You have to, maybe we should kill out the politician, then, you know, replace it with another group or whatever. Or something went to my mind 8 years ago. So, I even dare saying that if somebody wanted to commit suicide, that's it would be a good thing and all that. So, that also went to my mind in the last 8 years and all that. So, I'm the first person to come out and say against the populist policy of the party. 10 years ago, 11 years ago. You know, you remember that money that was given out. At first, I know one person who used to drink wine together. You know, so, I thought he was joking. He really do it. And I was shocked. I went on the paper and said, look, this will damage our value system dramatically. You make people becoming weakening and not want to work. You know, that so. You remember that village fund, you know, that so. And he went out of the first page of the Protectorate. I was surprised because 10 years ago, yeah, I've known a little bit in the society, but not much known to put me on the head of the first half of the first page of the Protectorate. So I thought, then I started thinking, well, the thing that I was talking must be in the mind of the intellectual quite a bit. But they somehow didn't come out and say it. They dare not come out and say it. And I started thinking what I was trying to talk. Oh yeah, with the interview that I had yesterday. On this education things, what I need to do about with the 8 years experience. And the fact that last week alone, this week alone, I went to 2 public speech on reform and all that. I actually concluded my thought only day before yesterday that finally the most important thing about the reform is that we got to get the society to commit to certain core values. That has to be instilled, hopefully, in the Constitution. the example of the value I already given to you. But I think that should be about 10 of them. Literally constitute that the Thai society has to commit to this value because it is the right thing to do. Because when we do that, then the rest will follow. Whether it's the education system, whether it's the economic system, whether it's what else, political system. When we actually instill the so-called, so to say, the 10th value or core value, then everything they do, they will have to keep that in mind going forward, whether they're doing it or whether they put it into policy. That 10th value will have to be something that whatever they do will have to end, will have to form a structure, based on structure for it to do it.
Just to follow on from that, I think he was asking about the values of his small startup company. He's having a hard time setting the right set of values in his staff and co-workers, so trying to set or reset the values of the whole country, that would be a gargantuan task. So how, in practice, how would
In
we
the short
go
term,
about that?
in the short term,
Yeah.
I'm good at talking about long term. In the short term, I guess you have to give them money. I really can't give you a good answer, except that we have to give them money. In my company, we have 41 years of build up. That's the advantage of early adopter. But in your time, you are dealing with the reality of today, where people switch off like anything. And they don't understand the value of being loyal to the company. So, I try to think about something else about more money. I can't think of it now, maybe you can help. Maybe you can throw in the idea. We are dealing with a very mobile workers who are so much hooked into the new digital world that wherever they go, they can take their computer and start more or less from your company, they walk to the other company and start working immediately. They fit into the system immediately. Because technology actually pulls us into that heart of a system, isn't it? Because that's another thing. We become a slave of the machine. The machine has rights. And that's another thing that we are facing. That's why I try to stay with Pranda. The robot can't do anything with me. But yeah, you have a tough task ahead. Give them a lot of money now. That's all you can say. And then wait for my reform committee to come up with a reform that will seep into the society and totally get rid of the Thaksin regime thing. That will take another 200 years. So,
going from the macro to the micro, what actually makes your workers so happy? What have you done? What does the company do to make them so loyal? Besides money, I guess.
yes, money has to be there, obviously. That so-called level of income has to be comparable to our side. But of course, when they work with us, we look after their livelihood. We look after not only their so-called working environment in the country, we also look after their family. at home, the children. And if they have problem about their parents, know that we can help, we will help. So there is a certain a feeling of total security to work in the company. That may be one thing to give them security.
Yeah, actually, one of my
One of my employee, her family runs a toy business. So she knows your company quite well. But her family business is in that field, and she always told me that all the craftsmen they want to work for Pranda jewelry because they provided housing, like you said, security. And actually, for my company, we provide rooms for the workers too. So we try to do what we can, But like you said, the values of the people are something that you cannot change easily. It takes time, and if they don't have that in here, it's extremely difficult to train them because even if you train them, they're going to leave or they're not loyal in any case. So it's you want to build things for the long term, and it's when you see that the people are not on the same page, it's extremely difficult. And you have to. There are people, but if you look at the Vietnamese people and the people of other nationalities, their values are much stronger. They're going to be much more successful in the long run compared to the Thai people, with the ASEAN opening up everything.
But let's wait until they have a lot of politicians running the country. Then their value will change. That's why we have to change our politicians. In order that they don't destroy our value. They already succeeded in a certain way. We have to roll back. Please.
Like to share. Okay. Just like to share things. Has been working in human resource field, and this is what human resource HR, and it's one of the key area that we have been discussing for years about culture, how to build them. With my experience, I would like to suggest, in terms of company culture, there's a two-way of doing it. First thing is, in the past, culture was formed because the people inside a certain companies behaving in a similar ways, and for a long period of time, you create norms and finally become cultures. So as a startup, if you want to create culture, first you have to define what you like it to be, and then you have two choices. One is to recruit people who have the same values to join your firm, and as they join your firm, they're going to appreciate what you offer. The culture that you have in the company, they become more loyal. Your culture will be like a value added to them. Doesn't have to be the money. When your competitor or they want to change to a new job, they have to take the culture into account. That if they change, they might not last in the new workplace, even though with a higher income. So that's one thing, but it's difficult to find people with the right culture to join your firm. Another thing is to build the culture. I mean, build the values of the people who join your firm. They may not share the similar belief. What you can do is, of course, the money is there. The benefits that you say, when you say is honesty or whatever value that you have, you need to reflect it in terms of putting it into practice. You have to build it, not just, okay, we are the company that caring for employees, caring for you, not just your work here, but also caring your family. But throughout the year, we never say the word about their families, we never ask about their families, we on the tragic events, we don't even show up, we don't even support anything. They're not going to have the value now. So money is one thing, but there's a term called cultivate your culture. You have to build it. Putting some funding into activities or program that to make people see that you really mean what you when you say this is what you value. Of course, you cannot build everyone, but certain people who start to see may adopt your values and they will stay longer. Those who find themselves cannot fit in with the culture, eventually they leave in. But after a period of time, you start to keep those people who have the same value as you. And those who don't have will start to go somewhere else where they find a match. And that I like to say.
Good point.
My question is, both of you, is yours is more of a challenge, yours is maybe you've achieved it. But when your employees assimilate and follow the values of your company that you want to propagate, how is it visible to the other employees? The benefit, the outcome by adopting that value? Is it obvious? Is it something that the other employees can see that actually they got something out of it? It's given them an advantage or a visible benefit or a positive impact. And how do you communicate that? So how do you make that visible? That when an employee is adopting this, that it's actually known to other people, so that they say, oh, I can see that that person has an advantage of by actually showing and modeling this value. So my question: how can you visualize and make that known to the other employees to reinforce that by adopting this, it isn't you actually get some benefit, whether it's monetary or something, and maybe that's published in the news. I don't know. How do you? So it's kind of an open question. How does Pranda do it so that?
Well, you have to behave that way.
Yeah, it starts with the leadership, of course. You have to model. But when people follow and adopt, how do you embrace the follower so they are seen as the leader? So it's not about you, the leader, but it's actually about the first couple of followers. They become the leaders that most of the other ones follow, not actually the top leader. So how do you embrace those first followers to turn them into the leaders that have the most effect on the mainstream?
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. In terms of HR, what we normally do is whenever we evaluate people performance, we have evaluated in two terms. One is the KPI, financial performance or whatever that they have to perform, the KPI, just based on work purely. Could be 80% or 70%. That's what they have to achieve each year. And another 20 to 30%, we call it behavior. We put these values into the behavior at the end appraisal so that it linked to the reward of annual increase or bonus or anything. Is what normally HR people would do. We tie that into that values, and we have to define the what kind of behavior we would expect people to do things as they work. So they have to consistently behave that certain ways, so that this will be part of their performance as well.
Well, we do use KPI too, yes. Does that answer your question?
So like a value KPI, a value-based KPI.
Yeah, the elements
Tied
of
to
the
behavioral.
yeah.
The technical term we call it competencies. And you can search on Google. It's lots of competencies. The definition like honesty, integrity, or communication, teamwork. There's a definitions and also the degree of how people, the definitions of the behavior, define behavior, so that they can communicate clearly to the people what we mean by honesty.
How do you empower, like I said, embrace and empower the first followers? When you so that the others see them as models rather than you as the model.
Yeah, that's actually the biggest, I would say the biggest factor that will determine if the company will be really big or not, is if they cannot get these early leaders. Because me as an owner of the company, even if I follow all the value, I'm the owner. They know I'm the owner. I'm supposed to do it. But if none of my top level employees do it, the other employees, they won't do it.
Definitely not.
So I have had experience with people, hiring some very good people now who are doing it, and I'm trying to encourage by two ways. One is complimenting them in private and in public. The other way is financial. It's reflected in the bonus, and within about 3 or 4 years, the stock option of the company. So I'm gonna developing this criteria so that I think in this day and age, we want to encourage them not to be employee, but to be a business owner.
Shareholder.
Yeah. Even if they own 0.5% or something in a company, they feel the ownership of the company. So I'm trying to gear the reward towards that direction.
Share value.
Yeah, share, because I told all my employees that I don't want to be a billionaire. I want to have 50 millionaire in this company. So this is my personal belief.
Yes, that's a very good move. That's what we do too. You can't be just trying to create the culture or the value system and all that. And then you are the only people who receive the benefit in money to return. You have to share it out. It's good. The stock option, the profit sharing scheme and all that. That's what we did in the early days. We did it for almost on day one. So that is a strong part to answer your question. Your sharing.
We're out of time now. I think very, very good discussion, and just please join me in thanking Prida for joining us and leading our various discussions here. And we have a little token of our appreciation for Prida for being with us here.